Our story begins with a girl about to make an important putt. She is a professional golfer. Next, we are shown how someone is carefully watching to ensure that the girl wins this game. The boy who watched this game could not remember exactly the moment at which it was, but it was definitely adolescence. This was exactly the moment when the guy watched the ladies' games with incredible curiosity. Of course, we know that it wasn't golf that he liked. Every time he watched a game of women's golf, his heart simply froze in shock. Because every shot of these girls was as fast as lightning, his love for this sport increased every day. But before our boy could realize it, it had become an everyday thing, and now he couldn't live even one day without watching golf. The boy cursed himself every day for the fact that he liked this sport so much, and he even turned to a psychologist to help him solve his problem. But even there, they did not give him any special results. The doctor said that watching golf matches takes up too much of the boy's time and has a bad effect on his life, but he can cope with it. The doctor's words made the main character think about it. But our boy decided to deal with this using his own methods and therefore signed up for a golf club. Now he will be able to practice his favorite sport and will stop pointlessly reviewing records of matches. Didn't matter to him how much time his new hobby would take, but only when he saw the golf course did the boy feel an incredible feeling. It would take his breath away. At one point, he even turns into a real poet and begins to dedicate poems to his favorite sport. But I am not able to convey all the beauty of his works. But we all understand perfectly well that the real reason why the boy came to this golf club was that he wanted to meet beautiful girls who play golf. But at one point, he still understands that it is not professional to play sports in order to meet girls, so he immediately discards this idea. But for the time being, suddenly he heard a sound that he only heard when watching golf games on TV, and at that very second, he ran there at the speed of the flash. All the same, he turns out to be right, and the same girl who he liked since he was a child was now playing on the field. He looked attentively at the girl and realized that his childhood dream had finally come true, because he had the honor of meeting his idol. After the lady makes her incredible blow, the guy with blue hair was simply in shock because the blow was simply amazing. He was simply shocked because he finally met a professional golfer named Sojung Park. She was simply an incredible master of the sport. These were the names of the lady who caused him to become interested in this game, and it was as if God himself decided to give him a gift and gave him the opportunity to meet her in person. Suddenly he realizes that the medications he took to always be in shape began to take effect, but he could not appear in front of his idol in such a terrible form. The lady decides to make another incredible blow, but this doesn't make it any easier for the main character because he also wants to play. Looking at the beautiful girl, he realized that he would never have such a chance to meet her again in his life, so he decides to capture all possible fragments in the echoes of his memory. It was a truly special day for him. If he missed the chance to play on the same field with her, he would never forgive himself. But suddenly something strange happens. Due to the enormous amount of stress, the boy shouts at the entire playing field, thereby attracting attention to himself. Out of nowhere, another girl appears next to him, this time with glasses, but why the hell did she come here? Of course, it is at this moment that the boy makes his strongest blow, and the ball flies exactly in her direction. Only after the ball practically flies right into her nose does the main character begin to realize that he is in a simply terrible situation. He just starts screaming in fear, but the girl starts wondering who this guy is and why the hell he left on the golf course. But the guy with blue hair was too confused to explain anything to the girl with glasses, so he tries to find an excuse. But at one point, she just gets tired of waiting, and she starts screaming and asks again who this guy is and what he forgot in this place. While our main character was trying to figure out how to get out of this situation, the lady continued to try to call him, but he was too scared to talk to the girl. It turns out that she thought that the main character decided to use the golf course as a restroom, and said that such behavior was simply unacceptable for a young boy like him. Meanwhile, he was simply in shock. At first, he was worried that he was going to be accused of watching the golf game, but now the situation took a completely different turn. He thought that he quickly needed to leave here to save face. At that very second, he begins to bow to this lady and try to beg for forgiveness. He really did not intend to use the golf course as a restroom. He did not even think of such a thing. Seo-jung appears and asks a girl with glasses named Serom if she found the golf ball she hit poorly. Of course, the protagonist's face was filled with horror, because not only did they try to falsely accuse him, but his idol might now think that he uses the golf course as a restroom. But she was rather wondering what the hell this guy was doing here and why. Instead of looking for the ball, she was standing and talking to him. The main character's heart began to beat much faster than before, because his idol had just asked her assistant about him. Serum began to talk about how she accidentally found him while she was looking for the ball and that he was using the field as a restroom. But he didn't even try to find an excuse and just started apologizing. Still, He decides to personally ask her for forgiveness and tries to explain that everything was not as it seemed at first glance, but she didn't even pay attention to him. Suddenly, she notices strange traces that remained after the blow of the main character, and she, like a true Sherlock Holmes, began to investigate this case. These two immediately began to panic, and Sarome began to blame the boy for the fact that it was because of him that they found themselves in such a terrible situation. Like a true Sherlock, she checks the tracks for all parameters, but Sarome couldn't understand why she started sniffing the tracks after the blow, but suddenly Sojung realized what was really going on here, fell silent at that very second, because they began to understand that they would not get off with a simple warning, and the lady began to get angry to such an extent that her teeth were chattering. She asked who the hell the guy is. Our main character. She immediately begins to show him the exit and ordered him to immediately get out of here until she called the police, but he did not understand why she was yelling at him like that. The main character couldn't just leave this place because it was the only golf course that he liked, and the girl with glasses in the background was thinking about the situation. Still, she decides to warn the boy that her mistress never repeats her words several times, and if the main character does not leave here right now, then most likely the next thing he will see will be a golf course, only he will be buried in it. The boy immediately closes his mouth because he begins to understand that he is far from in the best situation. She told her assistant that she had exaggerated a little, because in fact the lady in the cap was not as criminal as she had described, but Seroy knew perfectly well what she could be like if you angered her. The main character, meanwhile, tried to come up with a reason to stay and decides to say that in fact, from today he started working here. The lady with glasses was very happy about this news, because she would finally have a student and she would not be the youngest member of the team. But the guy clearly understood that he was in far from the best situation. Having learned that the guy is now working with them, Sejong simply leaves, but her assistant asks her to wait for her a little. She turned to the main character and asked him to follow them, of course, that he began to carry out the orders of his new superiors. After which the actions are transferred to the office in which some lady in a red dress was sitting, those two girls and our main character. It seems that now there will be a very serious conversation. The lady in the red dress thinks that he shouldn't introduce himself because everyone already knows perfectly well who he is. The main character's name is Jong-woo. She asks if everything is okay with him because he doesn't answer her questions at all, but he says that everything is fine with him. In fact, he was terribly worried about being here. She decides to cheer up the boy a little by saying that he simply cannot behave so closed off from other people because he came here to become a real golf professional. While other girls looked at him angrily, he thinks that he will try to do everything possible to show the best result. But just one look from the lady was enough for the guy to understand that he did not belong here. Her gaze was too cold and frightening to such an extent that he could not even say one word. Noticing that the lady is somehow angry towards the main character, she decides to ask what she thinks about their new employee. In response, she only says that she cannot understand the reason why she is giving this kid a chance to prove himself because they could easily find someone better than him. These words simply shock our boy, and he thinks that now his self-confidence has been completely killed. The lady in the red dress didn't like the fact that she spoke so badly about the main character and asked to show him more respect. It was as uncomfortable as possible for her to be in the same room with a person like him, so she gets up from the chair and wants to leave as quickly as possible. The lady was simply shocked by this behavior and thought that the main character had done something bad to this, but Jong-woo understood perfectly well that if he told the truth now, his reputation would definitely come to an end. But Sarome wasn't going to sit silently, so she says that the main character used the golf course as his personal restroom, which is why her friend was so angry with her. She couldn't understand what was happening, but Sojung simply asked her to think about her words and left the room. The lady in red wanted to stop her, but it was too late. It was immediately clear that she did not like the behavior of the girl in the cap at all. She was completely sure that everyone can make a mistake and deserves a second chance. The lady in the red dress is called Mrs. L, and our main character asks her for forgiveness for his terrible behavior. He really should not have done this, but she asks him not to worry because the girl will definitely return after calming her nerves, and she asks the girl with glasses to take care of Sojung. How sweet she is and says that she will definitely do what Mrs. L asks of her. The lady in the red dress asks the main character to stay with them for a while. These two girls also live here, but she thinks that they can still find a way to get along here. But the boy is somehow very frightened by the mere thought that he will have to live with these ladies, but she assures him that in fact they are just great people. He just has to get used to the new environment. Despite the fact that he pretended to be completely unwilling to be in the same house with them, in fact the guy had just hit a real jackpot, because his childhood dream would finally come true, and he would live in the same house with his idol. After which Mrs. L gives the order for the girl with glasses to take him to his private room. She only asked that the main character follow her, and at the same time she would show him the house. Although the guy never paid attention, Saram turns out to be a very beautiful girl, and he thinks that he will have a great time here while he learns to play golf. While they were climbing the stairs, the girl suddenly turned around and decided to ask how old our boy was, which greatly frightened the poor guy. Still, she begins to guess about everything. Looking at the club, the girl with glasses realized that the guy wanted to play golf with someone as soon as possible. But he just starts to panic and he can't understand what the girl really means. She only says that she will give him a final warning, but if suddenly she sees the golf club again, the situation will take a completely different turn. The main character saw that she understood everything. It seemed to him that the girl was just laughing at him because he came here specifically to play golf, but they didn't allow him to do this. We were shown how the girl smiled, but after this the actions are transferred a little earlier when she walked along the field and looked for that damned ball that the girl could not hit correctly. After which she heard strange sounds and thought that these were some kind of animals that managed to find the golf ball before she did. But after she looked at what was happening, she was simply shocked because she saw the main character watching her friend play golf. Of course, she was simply furious with him, because not only did he violate the rules of the club, but it was also her friend. But it turns out that the boy was training at that moment, and Saram was surprised because he almost immediately managed to repeat all the blows of a real master of the game. World, just yet. But to take a closer look at his training. Until that moment, she could only watch on the internet how others were training. But this guy was incredibly talented. After she realized this, she decided to come closer and look at his blows from a closer angle. But almost immediately, the main character notices her and accidentally hits her on the head with a ball. The action returns back to the house, and the lady thinks that in her eyes, the guy now looks like a real golf god. She thought that the boy was a real ideal for her, because not only did he play golf amazingly, but he also immediately apologized for his mistake to Mrs. L, and she really appreciated this quality in guys. But in response, he only said that he was very glad that he managed to make a good first impression. She decides it would be a good idea to get to know each other better, and says that her name is Saram Kim and she is 20 years old. In response, he says that his name is Junggu Woo Sung, and he are 24 years old. At the end, he adds that he hopes that they will communicate for a long time. Suddenly, she says that the guy has incredibly warm hands. Most likely this is because he often practices with a hockey stick, but it seems that he doesn't like what she says. Suddenly, she asks her to ask him one important question. Of course, the main character agrees because he still has no choice. The lady was wondering who recommended this place for the main character, but he didn't quite understand why she was asking him this. But she explains to him that people with very high status come to their club. Usually they do this to discuss various business matters while playing golf with their business partners or something like that. She thought that the main character did not look like some kind of businessman, but suddenly he told her that he was recommended by a person who personally knew Mrs. L. He, of course, was aware that very important people come here to play golf, but he still asks maybe stars come here too. But she confidently answers that world pop stars constantly play there. But she asks that the main character not worry so much about. Because of this, they have a very fun job, and there is no risk that some rich dude will decide to send the boy to the next world if he does something wrong. All the same, they finally come to the long corridor in which she and her friend lived. Now the boy will become their neighbor. The main character says thank you to Kim for helping him figure it out. But she thought that the main character was addressing her too formally, so she asked to call her simply Kim. By her first name, there is no need to give her last name, because they are now friends. She only asked the main character not to forget that now he is under her personal supervision, so that he should not do anything stupid while she is not around, after which they say goodbye. After the lady left, the boy thought that she was a very kind and sweet girl. Even though their acquaintance did not go well, she still helped him understand the situation. Suddenly, he becomes somehow strange and, like a true seeker of clues, begins to think that the girl helped him only because she liked him. But let's be honest, with such a face, he is not very attractive. After which, the main character goes into his personal room and thinks that now he is in real heaven, and his childhood idol now lives next door. Not life, but a fairy tale. But suddenly he comes to the realization that the main character has been wrong all his life. Despite the fact that on television, the girl looked very nice and played golf well, in real life she simply had a terrible character. He remembers the evil look with which the lady looked at him and understands that now he has revealed the greatest secret of humanity. In fact, she is still a tyrant. Many thoughts one after another visited his head to such an extent that it seemed that it was about to explode. He wanted to try to calm down, but he could not because his childhood dream had just been destroyed. In the next frame, we are shown how the boy leaves his room because he cannot sleep, because he urgently needs to go to the restroom. It seems that he was too worried about everything that was happening in his life. He carefully examined the corridor and thought that in front of him was now a door that led to Sejong's room, and behind it was Kim's room. Somehow this idiot comes up with a brilliant idea to open the door with a cry of surprise because he thought there was no one there. But it really turns out to be empty. But the main character still asked for forgiveness for entering the room so suddenly. Since he had such an opportunity, he decided to lie down for a while on his idol's bed. At least this way he could fulfill his dream a little. But when he entered the room, the boy was too inattentive and did not even notice the girl who had been sleeping on the bed all this time. He understood that she was incredibly beautiful, but he was just terribly scared to be near her. For him, it was as if he was in front of a screen that could show films in 3D format, and finally he was able to see his idol live. Suddenly, he hears very strange sounds and cannot understand why the hell someone was brought in at such a late time. And this turns out to be the same lady who just returned back to the room. It turns out that all this time the main character was dreaming a dream. But now he found himself in a not the best situation. Grabbing his head, the guy called himself a real idiot, because if she saw that he was in her room, she would definitely not leave a living place on him. On the way to the room, she discussed what old man she was and thought that he was too crazy for her to go on a date with. The lady began to sort out her things and said on the phone that she would have to take money from that man, and meanwhile the main character managed to hide behind the closet so that she would not find him right away. While she continued to talk on the phone, she said that she would do this task later, but the boy could not understand which old man he was talking about. He couldn't understand why the girl was playing some strange game and decided to turn on Sherlock Holmes mode again to investigate this case. Suddenly, she starts arguing on the phone with a man because he calls her only when he needs help or money, or help with money. She asked him not to poke his nose into her affairs, or she will start interfering in his. She thought that she could very well open her own business and start making money from it, and she no longer needed a man like him. She would rather have a pet than such a young man. The girl still decides to bring the quarrel to an end and says that she can easily find a replacement for him, and now he better not disturb her or she will simply leave. But suddenly the caller says something that angers the girl, and she throws her brand new iPhone straight at the wall. It's a pity, of course, but it's okay. She's rich and will just buy herself the latest model. Of course. She was terribly angry because this damn idiot took all her money, and after that he no longer needed her at all. She simply could not believe that he dared to do this to her. It was clearly visible from her facial expression that despite the fact that she was angry, she was actually ready to cry at any moment. Why was her damned life so terrible? It seemed to her that even her favorite game of golf no longer brought any joy, and now her happy future was under terrible threat. Suddenly she starts crying and thinks that she once again drank too many drinks, but she couldn't understand why she did it. Meanwhile, the main character was still in the room, and watching everything that was happening, he simply could not believe his eyes because the girl was just crying in front of him, and he thought that she had absolutely no feelings. Suddenly she gets out of bed and says that she won't sit in her room and be sad because of some idiot. She'd rather continue her life and enjoy every day, after which she wipes the tears from her eyes. The main character thought that the girl looked like she had just had her heart broken, and rather, he was talking to her boyfriend on the phone. Suddenly, the boy realizes that he said it too loudly, and now the girl with blue hair will definitely send him to the next world. But everything turned out okay. It turns out that the lady decided to take fate into her own hands and began to practice golf. It's not difficult to imagine the protagonist's surprise, because he just saw a real golf pro in action, but he didn't expect everything to happen this way. Meanwhile, the lady was incredibly happy because she had finally gotten rid of the damned guy who was poisoning her life, and now she could devote all her free time to her favorite game of golf. But the main character still couldn't stop being surprised by the fact that now his idol is practicing golf in front of him. Is he really sleeping? Someone pinch him. He couldn't look away because every hit on the ball was simply incredibly powerful. He thought that by watching how she played, he could also learn how to perform different techniques. It was clear that the lady devoted her entire life to this game because each of her blows was perfectly polished. No one could become a worthy opponent for her. But what was her surprise when she saw the main character who had been standing in the corner all this time? Apparently, he decided to pretend to be a statue in the hope that she would not see him. But the problem was that there were never statues in her room. Of course. As soon as she saw him, she was immediately scared because he looked like some kind of ghost who had come to take her soul. But this damn Metallica fan asks her to calm down, because it's just him. Now he will live with them, and by chance he ended up in her room. The girl was already terribly angry with him for what happened this morning, but now there was simply no end to her anger, and the boy thought that he had no chance of survival. But surprisingly, she didn't go to hit him with her fists, but just started screaming and asking what the hell he was doing in her room. But he just starts smiling and tells her that Mrs. L allowed him to live with them since he now also works here. But she wasn't going to believe him and said that the main character is a damn liar. Mrs. L couldn't come up with such a terrible idea after they had a fight this morning. He just makes a very serious face and says that he told the truth. The lady really allowed him to stay here and now he lives with them. She still wasn't kind to him because he was in her room, so she pointed her finger at the door and told him to get the hell out before she sent him to the next world. But suddenly this idiot just falls to his knees and begs her to stay working here. In response, she puts on a very serious face and decides to remind the main character that she never repeats her words twice. But he also knows how to put on a decisive face and says, please, the main character asks the girl to give him the opportunity to prove himself. But at this point, the patience of the lady with blue hair ends and she says that the main character simply left her no other choice since he is not going to listen to her. Then she will take other measures against him. But suddenly he begins to remember her various phrases that she said during the game, which puts her in shock. Now she understands that she herself was trapped. It turns out that this idiot is not so simple either, and took a lot of photos while practicing golf. Now she will have to listen to what the main character tells her, or he will show everyone how she actually trains to become stronger. She calls him a complete freak and says that this damn kid won't dare use those training tapes. Okay, after all, he's not as decisive as we thought. He immediately says that he didn't intend to use them, but he asks her to listen to him. At this point, the lady begins to understand that the boy is not as stupid as he seems at first glance. Instead of showing everyone the training records, he decided to simply negotiate with her. She still agrees to negotiate with him, but only he will have to comply with several conditions and also delete the training records from his phone. The main character, of course, is also shocked that in such a situation, the lady still manages to set conditions for him. But she says that she also needs proof, so let him practice and she will film it on the phone, then the negotiations will be carried out on equal terms, by the way. And the lady came up with all this quite cleverly. But he did not know how to play golf at all, and therefore did not want there to be records of his unsuccessful training, so he said that it would be better to delete the records that he had made. But she was not going to accept such a blow of fate so easily, because the boy watched how she trained to play golf, and now she will watch how he trains. It will be quite fair for everyone. It was immediately obvious what a strange face our boy had. In her place, I would have better photographed his face at that moment and made several memes out of it. Then life would have been much more interesting. She asks the main character to stop wasting her time and just hit the ball a few times, and only then will they begin negotiations. But he suddenly asks her if she will forgive him if he right now shows a master class on how to play golf. For some reason, her forgiveness was very important to him. But in response, she only said that everything would depend only on what kind of training he showed, so he had better hurry up and show everything he was capable of. But as soon as he makes the first blow, the lady's face changes at that very second, because until that moment she had never seen a beginner be able to play so well. She couldn't believe her own eyes because the guy looked very weak and in general, he looked like a loser. But the way he played golf put even her in a state of shock. For some reason, the boy stopped and didn't make any more strikes. Had he really spent all his strength on just one damned attack, but he himself didn't understand how he managed to hit so hard. Suddenly, someone called the girl by name and he was very scared, realizing that now someone would come into the room and see his pitiful hits on the ball. The lady with blue hair said that it was Sarome and asked the boy to immediately hide. She asked her friend not to enter the room yet and asked in surprise if she had already returned home. But for some reason, she decides to repeat the main character's bad joke and sharply opens the door, surprised that the girl with blue hair is still here. But she tries to explain to her that she drank a lot of drinks and now her condition was simply terrible, so she would like to be alone. While the main character found the best place to hide, the girl began to complain about her mother, who did not let her stay and asked her to immediately return home. While the main character was hiding, the girl with blue hair could not believe that such a situation could really happen. He was already determined to continue training, but of course he could not do this while he was hiding. The situation was truly simply terrible. He understood perfectly well that the girl was a real master of golf, and he really wanted to learn how to play just like her. But she clearly did not intend to recruit students for herself, and was extremely unhappy that the main character wanted to learn golf from her. And on this note, we end our video. Thank you for watching. Please like, so that the new part comes out soon.